Good to go, Val?
Yes, sir. Okay, call us back into regular session. Thank you everyone for being here this evening on a summer night. I'm sure there are more fun places you could be when it's still kind of at 85 degrees outside. I don't know. Tuesday market's still kicking. Tonight we start with call order and the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I would be looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. And do we have any audience time forms? No? Okay, perfect. So next I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
It's been moved by Janine, seconded by Monty. Questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. And we're going to move right into the action items. Tonight is the night where we elect the board chair and vice chair for the coming school year. And remember, board members, so for this, nominations do not require a second. So I'll call it open for chair. We'll take nominations and we'll vote on that. And then after that process is closed, we'll take nominations for vice chair and vote on vice chair. So, okay. So I'll be looking for any nominations for chair.
I'd like to nominate Kim Strutchen for chair.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll call nominations closed. I would be happy to accept the nomination. So for that, we would ask for board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next would be nominations for vice chair.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Wayne.
Okay. Any other nominations? Look at the nominate. Okay, and Wayne, I assume you accept. Perfect. All those in favor of Wayne's vice chair, please say aye. Aye. Perfect.
Do I have to say aye?
And I mean, kids are regretful that you can vote for yourself. Okay, you can ballot box, you get to do that. All right, we will do that. Thank you, everybody. That was the next action item actually is to discuss approving the finances of school buses. Lauren, yeah, come on up. I like your t-shirt this evening, sir.
Yes, it's nice, isn't it? Good evening. Well, I'm happy to be in front of you once again, requesting approval for financing and purchasing of some more school buses. We have the funding for school buses comes out of Transportation Equipment Fund, not General Fund. Two of those leases that we have in place right now expire at the end of this year. So I'm asking for approval for the financing and the purchase of 8 84-passenger buses and 5 special needs buses. Most of those buses are to be replaced, but some of them are additional to augment our fleet as our transportation population grows. So we have to take some questions.
Just curious, how many new ones did that work with?
Additional?
Yeah.
5.
Cool.
Special needs buses, 3 of them are going to be replaced, 2 of them are additional. The special needs just keeps growing.
And so, am I remembering correctly that last year sometime you said that new emissions requirements were increasing the price of new school buses?
It will. The current emission standards are 2010, which is all the buses come equipped with that. And EPA keeps pushing back any further implementation of newer technology for their emission systems. Right now, if I remember right, it's 2025 is the date.
Okay, so we're okay for now as far as extra spending on that side.
Correct.
Okay, so I would be looking for a motion to approve the purchase.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the buses.
Second?
Been moved by Glenn, seconded by Eric. Any following questions you have, Jenny?
My question is that I know that Portland Public Schools have, outfitted their bus, they changed it to propane. And I don't know if that's something that you change to, or do you purchase buses
You purchase them like that.
that are propane? Because I understand, like, environmentally, I know they run cleaner than gasoline, and then it has been more cost effective for them. So I don't know if do we ever consider or look at, or how much more are they?
I actually have looked into it a little bit, and you're correct, it is cleaner burning, and when they're running, you can hardly tell they're running, as opposed to a diesel engine. There's some good things about them, but there are some drawbacks as well. The range of a propane bus is pretty short. You know, the research I've done, the little bit of research I've done, 150 mile range, which pretty much says that bus is staying in town and it's not going on trips anywhere. So it kind of constrains the flexibility of its use.
Do you ever consider having a mixed fleet then, do you?
I have considered it, but we'd have to really do an analysis on that, on how many buses that we would just basically make city routes, because we're not going to be able to pull into Pride or someplace like that and fill up with propane, not right now. Yeah, there are some definite advantages to it. And another thing to consider would be refueling. Right now for diesel, we have a company, Redhour, that comes on site and does the fueling for us at night. And I don't know if anybody right now currently offers that. And we do not have the space or the facilities to construct our own fueling station. And I'm not sure that we want to go down that road because there's a whole lot of environmental and hazardous regulations that you have to contend with that.
So we have kind of doctor visits per se with refueling overnight. That's pretty neat. So we have a company that comes up and fuels all our buses.
Local company, Redhour.
That's
I
everything.
did not, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's 5 or 6 nights a week. And what happens is when the driver needs to have their bus fueled, they'll make a mark on a little spot on the back of the bus. So when the fueler comes by, if there's no mark, don't stop. If there's a mark, stop and fuel.
Any other questions? So it's been moved by Glenn and seconded by Eric to purchase, to approve the financing of 13 school buses on our 5-year lease. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
And next we have a series of policy revisions. These are all ones that have been on first reading. And we'll cycle through them. The first one is JFG searches with Matt.
Good evening, everyone. Policy JFG searches was brought to the board last month. We spent quite a bit of time talking in work session and in this session. We went to 30-day review. Special thanks to Glenn. Got some feedback during that time, and I think we, over these last few months, have created a better policy, hopefully, for everyone, students, staff, everyone in our school district on searches. As per the feedback from the last board meeting, we made a change in paragraph 2 of item number 1, just some wording there that we took that and replaced reasonably related to the line appropriate for. And those were the changes that were communicated during that time. I'm available for any questions if you have them.
I was curious when you said that you made revisions and whatnot, did you also run this by the legal counsel to make sure that, because I know there was some discussion on, we strongly don't recommend you change this because this will open you up for that.
Right.
So was that?
Yes, we've been partners with our legal counsel through the entire process and have been in clear communication with them, so we feel we have a good policy in place.
All right, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the policy.
I'll make a motion to approve the policy insertions.
Second?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on policy? Okay, so it's been moved by Glenn, seconded by Janine to approve the revisions to JFG searches. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Matt. And the next one is policy revisions to personal communication devices and social media. Don.
So this again is a follow-up after we presented the initial in June. We got no feedback from the board at that time to make any changes, but what we did get was from some feedback from OSBA. And what you will see in here is a couple of amendments in terms of the definition. Instead of a personal communication device, it's a personal electronic device. That's the biggest. And then there's a couple paragraphs. The third paragraph talks about making available if the district adopts any electronic curriculum, and if the student is choosing to use that, and we can choose to make that available for those students that can do that. There is a little bit of a change in definition, making sure that what an electronic communication device is. That's the paragraph above, and then including the language that the district will not be liable for those personal electronic devices, students. So not grand sweeping changes, a lot of definitions, but.
Any questions? Clarifying questions? All right, so I'll be looking for a motion.
I guess I'll make a motion. Let's keep it rolling.
You have to read it.
For the personal communication devices and social media policy, JFCEB. Really specific.
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments? So it's been moved by Glenn, seconded by Monty to approve the revisions to JFCEB. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Don. In case he gets the revisions to JFCJ, weapons in schools, and weapons in schools pertaining to staff.
Okay, thank you. Since the June board meeting, we did make one revision based on some board comments, and it has to do with some of the discussion we had at the Gun-Free Zone Act versus Oregon law and the confusion. So in the first paragraph of weapons in the school, you can see we took out the federal Gun-Free Zone Act and only applied Oregon state law. That's consistent with what our local Washington County will approve and cite as they recognize how to deal with violations. So we took that out to avoid the confusion, which is consistent with our county, what the sheriff will impose and our district attorney will impose. That's the only change that we've made to the revision.
Any clarifying questions? Yeah.
So somewhere here there is four likenesses of the weapons being applied. I was searching to find it again. Somewhere it talks about anything that looks like a weapon.
Replica weapons?
Right. So I assume that doesn't include, actually I wonder a little, the color guards use rifle batons.
Yeah, that's under, there's a category for instructional use, which is exceptions.
And I don't know if that includes, I don't know what, we've seen some.
Here's where it is right here. It's in the exception on the page 3 under exceptions. It says right here, the superintendent or designee may authorize other persons to use weapons, programs, activities approved by the district, conducted, different courses, weapons are related, sports that would take the RPs, the color guard, those replicas we would allow.
So is there somewhere that kind of says what the approvals are, or is that already just a negotiated thing that's okay?
It's something that it would be a case-by-case basis. I think of some of the examples of that would be around drone production, that kind of thing. In the past, there's been a need for a prop in a drone production. Obviously, starter pistols at track meets, those types of things.
The other thing we've had in middle schools is like during the Civil War curriculum, they bring in reenactment of the musket, so it's a real weapon back in the old days, so it would fall as an exception because it's being used for curriculum.
So I just wanted to point out the one other change you made after our meeting, and that's the first word of this policy, right? Before it said no person shall bring weapons in the schools, and that's actually contradictory to Oregon law. If someone has a concealed weapons permit, right, and it doesn't work for the school, you can't stop him from entering the school grounds, right, with that weapon. So the wording of this policy sounded like it was contradicting the Oregon state law. So the words no person had to change to students, right?
Well, so yeah, we wanted this policy to be specific for students, and then where we fulfill the requirement of Oregon law is what you're talking about, concealed weapons, is under the fulfills the Oregon state law. There's exception of that specific ordinance. So.
I need clarification on that. Are you saying that if a parent or somebody has a concealed weapon permit, they're allowed to be on?
That's correct.
In parent help in the classroom?
Legally, if somebody has a concealed weapons permit by Oregon law, they are able to come onto our grounds.
Are they required in the process of the volunteer clearance? Are they required by law to state that they, or does somebody know that they have a weapon?
The only people that have access to know who has a concealed weapons permit is law enforcement.
That is crazy.
So, Casey, it might be the other policy for like staff and volunteers, but I thought sure I read something in there that we could control, obviously what our staff does, but also the volunteers are working in our schools, like a parent volunteer. So like a member of the public who couldn't.
Yeah, I guess that's important. So when you're talking about officially volunteering or being an employee, that's applies in the staff policy. But if we had a parent, let's say, show up at a commencement or a back to school night in a non-official capacity and they have a concealed weapons permit, we can't prevent them from coming in. They're legally able to come into our school. Now, an employee or somebody's in an official capacity that we classify as an employee, we have that in our policy, the next policy for staff, which we have the authority to prohibit.
Or if I volunteer and go in every Monday and I signed up through the volunteer.
That says you
You're a
can't.
volunteer.
I'm a volunteer.
You're a volunteer.
It says district
It's an
volunteers
official
count.
capacity.
I'm feeling a little bit better. Right there.
Any other questions? So then I would be looking for a motion to approve the revisions to both JFCJ, weapons in schools for students, and GBJ, weapons in schools for staff.
I make a motion to approve the revisions to policy JF. Did I get that right? JFCJ, yeah, and policy. Yeah, and GBJ, weapons in schools staff.
I would say that.
Last chance for comments. Janine?
And so again, I'm sorry if you said this because I got stuck in the fog of, can you tell me all of this was covered, has gone through with legal counsel and feel that this is a solid?
We have run this by OSBA. OSBA does suggest that we keep it in the policy for the Gun-Free Zone Act piece because that's a standard, but we feel comfortable in the fact that we reference Oregon law, and that's what our law enforcement folks will enforce. We had an individual earlier this fall, we've covered it, who was in direct violation of the Gun-Free Zone Act in front of some of our schools. And it was in our policy, and law enforcement was not able to act. So even though we had it in our policy, where our local law enforcement wouldn't recognize that. So we feel comfortable because we stay in Oregon law, and that's where our local law enforcement recognizes that we're good.
When the situation happens, though, we still are, it's within our parameters to be able to still do the lockdown, lock-in, whatever, all of that. That would still be, are we saying that would still be our...
We would advise any one of our schools, if there's any individual within proximity, we would go into a lockout or a lock-in, but that won't change.
That won't change.
No.
Making you feel
We
like
control
that?
that.
Any other questions or comments for Casey? Okay. All those in favor of the revisions to JFCJ and GBJ, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Casey, for your work on that.
Thank
And next is revision for policy JHCDA. Elaine.
Hello. You may recall 30 days ago or so, we talked about administering injectable medicines to students. When you had a question, and I emailed that response. Did you receive it, and were you satisfied with the answer?
Not that I remember the answer.
Would you like me to provide emails?
I've been, go ahead.
Okay. So I said, Wayne asked if students could carry their own EpiPens at school. I talked with our lead nurse, Susie Strachan, and this is what I found out. So I'm going to read this because there's a few steps, so I want to make sure.
I do remember the mail, but I think it's useful that.
You want to share it? Sure. Under certain circumstances, a student could potentially carry their own EpiPen. The parent needs to obtain a doctor's order stating that the child may carry the medication within the school. Then the parent fills out both a medication authorization form as well as a self-carry form. And if the medication is a prescription, then the nurse may meet with the student to determine if she feels that the student is capable of safely managing the medication on his or her own, and then the nurse signs off on the issue. So that's how we manage that in multiple steps to make sure that everything's covered. And obviously it's different if you're working with somebody in high school than if you're working with a first grader or something. So elementary and secondary definitely differ there. Okay. Yeah.
So that brings up a question then. I don't think this is probably going to happen, but what I think you just said was that you're putting the school nurse in the position of countermanding the doctor, saying the student can have it, but the nurse doesn't feel like the student should have it.
I asked our nurse about that because I had the same question, so I'm glad you brought that up. What she said is that, first of all, that hasn't happened, so it hasn't been a situation that's occurred so far. But second of all, she said if it did, she would call the physician back and explain the concerns, and then they would go ahead and relook at the issue, and they may or may not continue to order that it can go with the student.
That seems like a fair way to go.
Yeah.
I know it's not related to injectables, but a personal experience with inhalers and them being locked away and the child needing it and not being able to convince the person that the doctor was, when he went back, as all was mocking of the situation, that the child, how could they not know? He believed that he authorized it, the child knew how to do it, and the parent authorized it and had trouble accessing it when they needed it. So that is a source of concern that I've had over the years. That if it's done through the medical channels and is prescribed and available, that we provide the means that the student gets. Obviously that whole chain includes an assessment by the parents and the doctor of whether the child is capable of making those decisions and understanding it. Just want to make sure that our policies are flexible in a way that lets us handle those scenarios and make sure that medicines are available to those that are able to administer it themselves.
Okay, so, and the other part of this revision was just that a backup EpiPen must be available if parents just have that option to store 2 EpiPens at school rather than 1 if they need to. And so they've done that already, but now it's in the policy, so.
All right, so then I'd be looking for a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to approve revisions to policy JHCDA, administering injectable medicines to schools. A second.
Any last questions or comments? All right, so moved by Adriana, and seconded by Janine. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Elaine.
Okay, I think I have the next one too.
You do. We'll let you keep going.
Okay. So the next policy, special education, free and appropriate education, or FAPE, as we lovingly call it. So the main issue with this policy is that students attending our charter school, which in our district is City View Charter School, have the same options for support if they require special education services that people in buildings have. So we do have that same support put in currently. I didn't receive any questions on that, so my recommendation is just proceeding as is with the wording.
Any clarifying questions? All right, then I'm looking for a motion.
Make a motion to approve revisions to policy IGBAJ, special education, free appropriate public education.
I will second that.
Last chance, perfect. So it's been moved by Janine, seconded by Glenn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And next we can go through reports of discussion. And Steve, if you can kick off citizens quickly, please.
Great. Normally Travis would be here doing this, but he's sick tonight, so I'm sitting in for him. We got Lisa and Alex who are going to go over with their recommendations. First, we have some openings that they're going to announce, but they've also proposed some language to our policy that would increase the involvement and role and the responsibility of the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee. I'll turn it over to them. And Eddie, I think you graduated?
Yes.
All right.
So he's not going to count next year to your student minimum. Good evening. So first we will announce the vacancies that we have for the CCAC. There are going to be 9 vacancies, and a couple of those folks may reapply once the new application structure is approved. So I know for sure one at least, probably at least 2. So once we talk about the suggested changes tonight, tomorrow those vacancies will start to be advertised, and hopefully applications will come flooding in. So you can review those next month in August. Okay, so if you look at the new proposed policy that's in your packet, you'll notice a couple of changes. The first one is that it looks a lot like what you have for the budget committee process, which is what we suggested last time. So it's almost an identical process, which was on purpose. It's familiar, we know that it's already been approved once, so we are in love with it. And also, we added the thing about 2 students, which I know you all are very excited about. And Eddie is here as a shining example of just what being on the curriculum committee can do for a student. It's what the result of success. So I think saying on that. And I think that's all. We're just here to answer questions that you might have.
All right. Does anyone have? Yeah, wait.
So, just have a couple concerns on the language. First of all, I think it's a great idea to have students on the committee. I have no objection to having them. First concern on the wording is it shall include a minimum of 2 students, and that depends on applications and availability and things. And I actually am also concerned about so 14 was a number before, and I don't know where the 14 came from.
Two per board member.
But I don't know if that was a function of it divided evenly, or 14 isn't a magic number. That's that we're. So if 14 was a magic number, I would have continued to have 14 plus up to 2 additional student representatives, and not reduce the number of other public adults included in the committee, and with the false notion of somehow having to reduce that in order to fit within a 14 number that I don't think is a magic number in the first place. So I would have suggested something about saying up to 2, saying the CCAC consists of 14 members appointed by the board. Up to 2 additional members can be appointed from the student body or something to that effect. That's the sort of thing I'd recommend. Because I do also want to see, and there's been a lot of talk about including expanding the scope of work that's desired to be done, which I hope includes adults visiting classrooms during the school day and or seeing the curriculum firsthand, which might be a limitation on the ability of some students who have the same amount of time. So I actually don't know why we limit it so much. If we've always had problems keeping active members attending, actively participating. I think we're encouraging more, and I just don't see a need to limit the number of adult participation in order to allow additional student participation.
I just want to clarify, because I think we've muddied the water just a little bit. It's 2 items that are actually on the agenda. So the first one is just to announce the committee openings and propose the selection process. And then the second one is to do the first reading of the policy. So I want to just hang tight for those comments on the policy and make sure that everyone is comfortable with, understands the vacancies, and that the new selection process will be. Lisa, can you remind us, so after people apply, those applications will be filtered through Travis and Steve's department, and then do they all applications come to the board? So like what we did for budget committee, sometimes you get very few, and so you don't have to, you can just accept them. And sometimes you get 3 times as many openings, or even 1 over, and we've interviewed them and had like a board subcommittee that interviewed. Is that the process?
And that's what we're looking to replicate. Some sort of discussion that says, we are going to ask a lot of you. We want you to be in our schools making these decisions, recommendations to the board. Can you do that?
Okay.
So that's what we'd be looking to do.
And so is everyone comfortable with that? Are there any other questions or comments regarding the vacancies and the selection process? I know you said
not the vacancy and selection process, but this particular item does mention the number of members of the committee, and if it means approving this and that means we just voted for 14 only, and then we have to have a discussion later, I do want to make sure that.
So that would probably be an opening as needed, which is in the policy. So if this policy is approved and if the numbers change, then we would recruit and approve 2 additional members if we were going to go to 16. Is what I think will probably happen. But regardless, we're still going to need 14 people in our next meeting.
Okay. Everyone comfortable with that? So then I'd like to get, go ahead.
So I guess I'm still trying, I'm a little confused here because I mean, you said one thing and we kind of still talked about the whole. Because, again, I'm trying to stay in the right bucket here
right.
at the time.
And it's because I think the way Lisa described it might be best. Because we can't approve the policy tonight, it has to go on 30-day read. So we can't approve tonight really how many slots it is if we're changing the number beyond 14. So I think the recommendation would have to be for OSP to announce the 14. And then if the policy changes that number, we would have to re-announce, or we won't have appointed by the time we approve the policy, so then we could review the number of applications we have.
But we're not changing the selection policy yet, as far as like announcing the 14 vacancies or however many there are.
Right.
Okay, so that's where the line is, that as it stands, it is, well, how we do the thing now, I mean, where each board member has 2.
Right, so we would announce that there's 9 vacancies, because there's 9 vacancies.
Right, so that's the limit of the scope for this particular action item, is we are announcing and we're approving that there are 9 vacancies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But we do not have a role as appointing. Right?
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet, because it will be like the budget committee. It will depend on how many applications come in.
No, I think she's asking the question. The policy here is simply maintaining a status quo and just announcing the number of positions open. It is not declaring our change that, there's 2 per board member and all that kind of stuff. All that is written in the other policy that we're not taking up. You just said they would go on 30-day review or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think just to make it simple, announce the 9 vacancies, finish with that, and then review the policy, put it under 30-day review. If the policy changes to include 2 additional beyond the 14 to include students, then we would just post the additional vacancies for students and have you review those applications as well.
No. I think we also need to point out that the application process is new also, right? So it's different from last year where people didn't have to fill out an application. But now, am I recalling correctly that the policy is vague enough so that it doesn't prevent us from issuing applications for this position? Right, so you can have the old policy policy, we're allowed to put out applications and ask people to fill them out.
So that's what we discussed last month. And so if for some reason the suggested policy, which is the next action item, sorry, doesn't get approved in 30 days, then you would have that pool of applicants, and then you would continue with what you would potentially normally do as a board, and each appoint two of whoever. I don't know.
Yeah, so in other words, it's okay for us to have the application, the new application, even though we haven't changed the policy yet.
Yes. Okay. Are we all sort of on the same page?
I think so.
So then, other feedback for Lisa and for Steve about questions or comments you have about the policy components. We have Wayne's comment. I actually like Wayne's point. I appreciate student participation, and that I got a new idea of, I like to bring up adults because I do think the adults end up being our key communicators, and the more we have of those, the better we do. And would people entertain the idea if you have one student for each high school? Each high school is a little bit different and has a different flavor. I know there was concerns from the community that if you got two, you might not get work done. But it may be interesting to see. I don't know if we have.
That was the original idea that was proposed, and it wasn't something that everybody was really passionate about. But the idea of having it be more of an honor for the students to serve and represent their school, and then have that change throughout the year. That's not to say that if you guys want to change it, we can't change it. I just...
Sure. Eric?
So I just wanted to throw 2 cents in based on the policy class I took at the conference last week. One thing they pointed out is, you don't need to be more specific than you need to be in policies, right? Don't constrain yourself. I mean, right now we're arguing over should it be 14 members, should it be 16, should it be 17, should it be 203? Why don't we just take the number out of the policy and say it shall consist of a number of members determined by the board under the recommendation from the curriculum committee chair, something like that.
I think one of my concerns with this policy proposed is that you are fundamentally changing how we equip personnel. Currently the CACC is an extension of the board, and so I'm not saying necessarily oppose or not, but historically it's been different from the budget committee, the way it was made up and its role. So I'm not sure I understand why we need to change that appointment process. I'm okay with people filling out applications to kind of say, yes, I will do the work as defined. And these are my strengths that I bring to the board. Because before we appointed, then we basically just voted as a slate, up and down. So I guess I don't quite understand the origin, why we feel we need to change that.
Well, I'd be happy to tell you why. Yeah.
Please.
And perhaps you won't agree, and that's why you sit there and I stand here. Basically, as a group this year, we did a lot of things that we felt were really important, and we learned a lot as a group about what is going to be coming up next to help inform ourselves so we can make better recommendations to you this coming year. And we really feel strongly that people need to be there consistently and need to be very invested and be very excited about being a part of our committee. And we also expect to have a lot more opportunities this coming year for people to be a lot more visible and connect with you all more as a board and our schools and things like that. That's feedback that we've got from you guys. However, also, it seems like maybe a more structured application process and perhaps a more more like a microscope kind of thing. You don't just like have someone sign up for a job and say, oh, if you want to, then you can work here. You interview someone, you spend some time deciding if they're the right person. And we think that might be a better process to get people who are actually really excited about being on the committee, because we are going to be asking a lot more of them. We don't just want someone to willy-nilly say, oh yeah, sure, and then not ever come, which has happened a lot. So what's happening now isn't working that much. If you want to continue the appointment process and have an application, but we just need people who are more excited and invested.
Janine?
I say bravo, because I think it's a wonderful change. I think that when you have all these different committees and you have the budget committee who do report and work with the board, that this is another example of the curriculum committee working with the board, making their suggestions, making their approvals known to the board to then move forward for approval or denial of a course. So I like the idea of an application. I love the idea of the interview because you want people that are vested in the process. And I like the idea that it's not just about who you know. It's about here you are putting in this application. We as a group are going to talk about it and make sure that you're willing to commit, because this is the time commitment. These are the kind of school visits we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do. Your position means something. And I think it's fantastic. So I think it's a good positive change. So I know I had another thought, but maybe come to me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment as a former member of that committee. I think this is great. I think, previously, because the appointment had been so casual, there was sort of this negative feedback loop where people who weren't really serious about it got onto it. And I know when I first got on there, when we were evaluating the CPM math stuff, I asked the faculty member who was facilitating, so can we all check out these books and, review them and then each discuss a chapter together or something. And she said, oh no, nobody who comes to this committee wants to spend any time outside the room, so there's no point in doing stuff like that. And so I think, it really is good that things are changing and that we're going to have an active committee with people who are really serious about it.
Mike and then Glenn.
Yeah, I was going to say in response to your question, our goal has been to make this a more active and relevant committee. And I think we've done that over the last year. I think the next step that we need to take is to change the process by which people get on this committee. And historically, if you were to look at, maybe to revisit some of the conversations that board members have had with those people that they're trying to get on the committee, it's a lot of convincing and maybe some arm twisting and that kind of thing. And so if we are going to expand the role and the scope of the work and make it more important work, then we want those people that are committed and dedicated and passionate to the cause.
Well, okay, so I'm all for passion and commitment and all that stuff. I guess where I wonder about is, so the person comes in and currently, I think the process is, I'm appointing someone, they have to be someone who's acceptable to me, not someone who's acceptable to everybody. So, then now we're changing it to these things where we're basically going individually on each one of the things that say they have to pass the majority of the entire board. And so you lose some control of the makeup as an individual. And that may be right, wrong, or different, but I personally kind of like being able to say, yeah, I want this person as my proxy on that committee. I want them to be committed. I want them to make good choices and make their voice heard. But I don't appoint the person for a reason, And so, but you do have that passion, so there should be some control. So I'm not saying I'm against it. I just,
When we last did it for budget, there was a subcommittee of 3 board members who did the interviewing, and then that subgroup brought forth kind of the panel like you have seen previously, where these are the recommendations of the 3 or whatever it was that year that we recommended to the board, and we nominated them as a slate, but even now we do it as a slate. There is an opportunity, just because one board member nominates them doesn't mean necessarily that everybody votes yes for them. So I did like when we did the process and we interviewed, just because there still was some board connection to that work, and the board helped decide what those interview questions were going to be, and then people volunteered to be on that committee. And Monica, you did that 1 year. Yeah, I thought it worked fairly well. Yeah.
I love this, and thank you, because I think that's part of the rubber stamping committees, and no more, our community is, and I think we're a board that really engages and really, so I think that's important. I do see your point completely. I do understand your point on, extension, of us, and I know that this is the first year that I will really, and I have one person she has to, I want her to so bad. I want her to support her, and she's a parent. But I do take this seriously in the sense of that the 2 individuals that I will recommend or appoint in that sense, will be, I don't know, should I say, I hear your point, I guess. I'm just kind of, it's like, gosh, it's been one of those evenings where it's like, just wrestling with it. Because I do see your point,
And why are we board members? And, so I do see your point. I'm open for discussion and discussing more, but I definitely do. I know what you're saying, yeah, so. But I am, either way, I think from where we've grown to whether who said what or how, I think that I want Hillsboro to be known as, in the 5-year visioning that we were looking at, is a place that if you really want to come and experience, as we say that, manos en la masa, and really get your hands dirty, this is a district. You're not going to be on a committee just to have your signature. So our employers know, and our college recruiters know, oh no, they served on this curriculum with the Hillsboro School District. No. It's not, and that's across the board. So thank you, especially as we go through the paradigm shift of our education and everything. I think this is amazing. I mean, really. So,
any other feedback? I don't know that we settled really on the
didn't.
student number or
We
whatever.
didn't.
So can I challenge Steve and Travis to try to,
If it's okay, we might look at the wording that Wayne suggested, 14 adults with the addition of 2 students at any one time. Maybe work that language in so it sounds right, and then throw that out in a weekly update
Or I also, after I said that, she brought up a good point on kind of a high school representation.
I do also.
but I
All
trust
the
Travis and the
curriculum also is not
committee.
necessarily just high school.
Right.
So.
That's why we said students before we have to have the high school. What if there's a super excited, really awesome middle school student here? If possible, someday, maybe.
Again, it kind of goes back to the why does the policy specify a number unnecessarily? If you had 6 kids who were dying to make a difference and have experience and they fill out applications, are you going to turn them away? Because you only have, now at some point you get overwhelmed and maybe you do, but have that problem, right?
It's a great problem. So we'll adjust some language in here, maybe a couple of ideas on how to take the numbers out, so it's still a reasonable size that you can do committee work, but doesn't limit you. If we had 25 parents who wanted to serve on this, that would be a good thing for us.
And if folks have additional ideas between now and then, he would be the point person.
Right.
And then we would see maybe questions or suggestions in that weekly update before the 30-day review is up.
Yeah.
Jim, you have a question too?
Matt, it's up on the 14th.
Yeah, because in order to have the candidates in place by October,
It's a little less than.
Huh?
It's less than 30 days.
Yeah.
That's okay. Engineering.
I guess that, if you're talking about students, that you also could think about a revolving. I know that I love the idea of having a student representative on the school board, and Forest Grove does it, but it's revolving. It's not a full year commitment. And I do strongly believe it needs to be a secondary student, because that's a little wonky to have a 3rd grader, because if you say yes to a 6th, then 3rd grader, and then they don't want to snack.
Be pretty cute though.
Actually, Janine, my comment was not about the age on the committee. I'm saying that the issues being tackled are not solely curriculum about the high school. And so in the discussion of having 4 high school reps, it wasn't about having high school reps being able to comment on their high school, because it's not just about high school topics. That's what I meant.
I know, but be careful with the 3rd graders. Some of them might be smarter than us, so you better be careful.
We'll go with a little young man named Masala. Any other questions for Lisa and any other here? Thank you both so much for coming and sharing all this, and I assume we'll see you maybe in August when we go out.
Yes. Do you, real quick, Eddie, you want to share your experience with us as a student? If you don't mind, 2 words really quick.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you again so much for appointing me to the committee in the first place. It was such a great experience as a high school senior to come in and, be having a seat in a district thing, which, nobody knows. I highly doubt that there are more than 10 of my classmates that knew what the district office was. So, yeah. So it was really neat. I learned a lot of policy, a lot of the things that come into place to do what we have to do and what we discuss. It was just It was great, simple. Had a lot of fun. Met some great people, great connections.
Is it preparing you for college? Do you feel you're a different person because of the experience?
Definitely. I will. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I decided, the possibility to come and do it again, because 1 year is good enough, 2 years is just perfect. And Kim was a kid, you're recommending 1% from every high school. Well, there are some things that we have to work with that, but I do have another idea that we could possibly sit down and talk. And I know I briefly spoke about it with Mike once before, but that's about an idea of a student council to serve for you guys. So whenever you guys need, a student like yourself or one of the other members, student members, you guys just keep it in the air. Keep it up there.
How many board members serve on the Citizens Curriculum Committee or the Budget Committee before they become a board member? So that's what happens when you become a committee member. You have your school board later. There you go. It really is. All right.
In there.
Thank you very much.
Just before you guys go, it is one of my goals this year to have a student advisory committee, and that is based on the conversation that you and I had. And I think I just want to highlight, well, first of all, thanks to you two for doing this presentation. The fact that we have a staff member that's out sick, and we have 2 members of the committee step in and do the presentation, I think that speaks to the stride that we made this year in terms of adding relevance to the work that's being done. And so thank you for that. You guys just do an excellent job, and you're both so involved with our community. I just want to say thank you.
Can we get an applause?
Thank you. So next we have a whole series of first readings here. The next one is policy GBEDA, drug and alcohol testing as it relates to transportation personnel.
Good evening. It's going to be hard to follow that, but we're going to try. This is Carol Hatfield. She's a supervisor for the Transportation Department of our district, and we're going to be presenting the first reading of policy GBEDA, which is the drug and alcohol testing policy for transportation personnel. And this came about because Senate Bill 193 went into effect back in January, and basically, it requires school transportation providers to have an in-house drug and alcohol testing program, and to also report to the Oregon Department of Transportation, Oregon Department of Education, follow all the federal regulations. And so OSBA put some language in place, some recommendation as far as policy, and so we'd like to present that to you. And how to go through 30-day review. We've been doing the work already, so there has been no change based on this policy, but we'd like to present it to you for 30-day review.
Anyone have questions? Yeah, Janine?
I was kind of curious, I'm speaking from my husband's company, so to speak, with the local changes in legalizing marijuana. My husband's company works with the heavy machinery and whatnot, and they have a no tolerance policy that they can test, and they can test at any given time, and it doesn't matter with marijuana, it stays in your system, so you're out, because you're operating heavy machinery. So I'm kind of curious when you talk about transporting the dear and sweet little cherubs of our district, what kind of does this, do you have to say, I'm going to give you a test next Monday, be ready? Or can you say, it is?
We actually do quarterly randoms. So people do not, we have a company that does that selection process for us. But they also have reasonable suspicion. So if for some reason, the supervisors have all taken training on how to recognize those signs, if we do have reasonable suspicion under that legal criteria, we can't pull somebody drug testing. And
legalized marijuana will not change. It's still zero tolerance.
Thank you. Any other questions? And so if people have questions or comments during the review period, they can send those to you?
Yes, send those to me and I'll be working with Carolyn.
Perfect, okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I keep saying 30-day review, everybody, but keep in mind I mean until August 14th. It's not Romeo. And the next one is Don gets to come back up, policy KDA public records.
So this is a policy for you in response to House Bill 3294, which provides us some exclusion to public records requests for any personal electronic emails that we might have in possession, along with a number of other things. But really the big changes in this policy are about personal email addresses we might have for any of our employees that we do not have to disclose those. So I ask for review of this one.
Okay. Any questions for them? All right.
You said again, what is the heart of the change here?
The heart of the change is that the legislation that was passed in 3294 does not, it allows us to exempt those records that the district has in possession of personal email addresses. So you cannot make a public records request for my personal email address, even if the district has it in place. Now, district-issued email addresses are different. That can go under, and a public records request can be made for any and all of the technology services email addresses. This just exempts. I want Mike Scott's personal email address and the administration of HSD's home email addresses.
The content of it, or just the knowledge of what
what that address is?
But not what?
We don't archive anybody's personal email, so we wouldn't have access to that anyway. It's just any email addresses that we would have. Much like social security numbers or home addresses, they can't request that in public records request. This just expands it to include email addresses.
This is a little wonky for me because I think that in a lot of training that we've gone to, they've talked a lot about, as a board member, they really highly suggest that you do not use your personal email to send information because it can be.
It doesn't mean it can't be subpoenaed. That's different than a public records request. So if there's a legal action, there is the potential for... What's that?
They're going to have to, if there's a subpoena, a legal action, they're going to have to really prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you said a little something in there.
Yeah, that will take a court action. This is we're dealing with just public records requests that people, the newspaper could come and we deal with those all the time. This just exempts those personal addresses from that disclosure.
So that we all can't show it in TP Mike's house. Perfect. And same thing, if you have questions over the review period, Don's your guy. And Don has the next one.
Yes. So just in accordance with House Bill 2426 and the more use of social media and personal electronic devices, this is another one that we wanted to bring forth and start reviewing because it's dealing specifically with staff. Thought we were updating the ones for students. It should be time to align the staff with that as well. So we did get some good input from OSDA on this. That's highlighted for you if you want to address any questions. I don't want to read it to you, but there are some things to consider in this policy.
Anyone have questions for Don about this tonight? Okay, perfect. Maybe we'll get some else. Thank you. Come back, see?
So this is about the use of personal devices, not the use of devices for personal use.
Right. And social media and staff's responsibilities on how they use social media in their personal and professional capacities.
Don, maybe it would be helpful, you and I had conversations about this.
Yep.
Just give them the highlights of this one.
So the highlights of this one, really what we're looking for is accountability across the board for our staff to act in a professional manner at all times, whether they're on duty or at a district-related function, or whether they're in their living room and on their, posting things to Facebook or to Twitter or things like that. That this policy states that you are to act in a professional manner that does not disrupt the school environment or the learning environment at any time. Also, pieces that we're looking at is the use of personal communication devices or personal electronic devices in communication with students. That is happening. That happens all the time. My son's a great example of this. He wouldn't know where he was going in all these athletic events if he weren't communicating with his coaches. So we're trying to address that we're setting a standard that our staff will communicate around school-related issues or around school-related topics and in an appropriate manner at all times, whether it's on a personal device or whether it's on a district-issued device.
Is that make another question?
Won't get us in the news if we require passwords to Facebook accounts. And this is trying to set the stage that communication today involves multiple personal and professional devices, and the policy states simply that in all those communications that you act or remain professional.
Yes.
That's a good summary.
And yes, that's a very good summary, that you are accountable for your actions to your employer and the community that you represent.
Thank you. And next we have a financial report, and Michelle's here to help us with that tonight.
I can't, I don't.
Hi, so you guys had a chance to review the financial report. Do you have any questions?
Any more questions, comments for Michelle?
Thank you.
She ran all night. Thank you for being here. I just have to give a
I just wondered if we attribute, or would like to attribute, or attempt to attribute the reduced student accident incidents to overt actions on our part. Are there things, are there activities that are continuing that are attempting to continue to improve safety and reduce this markedly, or is it kind of random from year to year?
It's a little both, actually, so it's kind of random, but every time we do have a student incident reported, we respond to that to try our best to make sure that doesn't happen again. Our risk manager, Yvonne Ducart, works with Casey for the building safety committees on those.
Are these things typically sporting event things, or are they, running in the hall and tripping?
They're kind of all over the board. Yeah, so non-class time, usually. It's passing time, it could be after school, lunchtime. So just about any time students are moving around, or staff.
It's amazing the variety we see on that. It can be a golfing accident, go figure, or it can be, walking down the hall, but it is all over the place.
It's not like there's themes that you analyze to try to address. Obviously, I bet you would look at them and where the themes, you've noticed them and address safety concern because it's apparent that
there's a pattern there.
A pattern, yeah.
Cold weather may have more slip, fall related type things. Typically, school day is going to have more chance of incident than a non-school day, just because of the number of people on site.
I don't see it, but do you know what our ending balance is going into the new year?
I don't have an audited ending fund balance for us, but Adam's probably around 15 million, which is very close to where we're starting in our budget.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at revenues and expenditures. There's quite a bit of difference there.
Okay, to the good.
Yeah. More money to spend than 1450.
All right, thank you very much. I know HE is not here tonight. Is anyone here from HDU? Okay, so then we're into superintendent time.
Maureen did send an email.
Maureen did send an email. That's, thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, I did think bunch of board members in place of her.
I'm not going to read it into public record, but she did send out board members with her thoughts around game share and additional funding, since she could not be here tonight. I assume most of you are not.
Did she
Isn't that?
It was this morning.
Yeah.
Early this morning. When all right, thanks, Jim. All right.
I have two quick things. I'd like to just publicly thank Washington County and the city of Hillsboro for their gift of the additional gain share money. We're going to be talking about that with the school board over the next couple of weeks, but much appreciated and just thankful for that gift. And the second thing is just to comment thing quickly is Connor Williams is in the audience. She's the new director of human resources. And so just wanted you to recognize and put a face with a name. She is replacing Lori Lewis, who retired in spring.
We know her. He was a principal at one of our elementaries.
Okay, I'll start with Glenn for board member time.
Well, first off, I congratulate us by getting through all those policies in, I think, an amazingly short amount of time. Normally, we haggle about them so much longer, so thank you, guys. I appreciate we did a little bit earlier tonight. But other than that, I'm just looking forward to this second year on the board and growing my own abilities and serving more, so I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Janine?
Wanted to just make a comment a little bit more on the student representation idea. Not only just looking at the citizens curriculum, but as I mentioned, Forest Grove High School and Forest Grove School District has had a student representative on the board for some time now, and it's revolving. I think it might only be, I don't know how long the shift is or the commitment, but they don't have a voting right, but they do have comments and suggestions and whatnot. So I kind of like that idea, and I like the idea that we have more students involved because the college and career readiness, the conversation changed when there were students involved and they were there. And I think both sides of it, adults that were in the room, were really appreciating that, as well as the students even said this was more than I thought I was expecting. So just really wanted us to have more conversation and appreciate that we're looking at doing more in that way. Wanted to just mention that some of the STEM work at Tobias Elementary not only is featured in a Solve flyer. They're doing some amazing work at Tobias, but they also took students and went to Mount St. Helens. And the principal went and they did some work there, and I thought they were all over Facebook how amazing this trip was, and it's exciting to see this commitment from the whole entire school as to what they're doing with STEM. Make sure you take a look here. This is from Bill out at Miller. This is a DVD of the presentation. He does a play every year with the students at Miller, and I forget what he said, 17 years or something like that he's been doing it, or 17 productions. So I asked him, I said, there's not a lot, sometimes board members aren't aware of this. I happen to go to this production and I said, gosh, I wish there was a way I could tape it. So he sent that along for everyone to look at. And wanted to say on a personal level how much I appreciate it as a Liberty High School parent, that receiving that letter from Matt in times of transition when they were going through the process of the principal selection, that it involved a lot of different folks from the community, staff and parents and student representation. But to really get that letter from Matt saying, here it is, this is it, and contact me with any questions you might have, because you don't know and you don't understand how many parents in our high schools have no idea who to go to above that next level. For questions or concerns or compliments even, So I appreciated that. I thought that was great, and I've heard positive things about the process on the selection. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
I'm excited about our retreat coming up. I just want to warn all the board members that we'll be talking about measurable objectives, and so come prepared. So that's my specialty. So
that means you're coming prepared.
Yes, I'll be coming prepared, so expectedly.
Thanks, Monty. Wayne?
I
don't think I have anything particular to say. Look forward to another year. Excited, as always, to get into it. And I'm pleased to serve as vice chair and will do my best to help support you in my work.
Couple of things. I was driving the other day on Walnut and I passed our community garden, right? And I had to stop. I don't know when you stop and kids setting them online and then everything was in bloom, so I had to stop and I took pictures. And then I was, somebody planted some beautiful gladiolas, and I'm coming up on 20 years and my mother passed away. Gladiolas for her flowers, and so I just took a moment and was there, took pictures, and then I just thought, gosh, we voted on this garden. I had this moment. And I just kept thinking to myself, we're preparing the soil, we're preparing the soil. And I just think as board members that, district, as we get ready for a new school year, and just have that thought of preparing the soil, our kids are coming back to us. So just that was really nice. I also hung out a bit at Walnut Street Park across from the apartments and the summer lunch program. If anyone ever, seriously, there's so many summer lunch programs all over our city. If you ever just take a break from lunch and just want to drive and just drop in and it's so nice. They have this wonderful little fountain there and a lot of the families are coming and just hanging out there with the babies. And a lot of kids that I mentored many years ago are moms now, and oh my gosh, I'm like, you mean your kids are coming into kindergarten next year? And so some of the girls that I mentored, the kiddos are coming to kindergarten, and I just had this thought, and her sister just had their baby, and so they were like, you should start a play group because you know so much about babies. And I'm like, just because I have 5 doesn't mean I know so much. So we were laughing because I was teaching them about object permanence and just kind of finding a way to teach them. And so hopefully we're going to start a little baby group with some of my younger moms that I mentored just to start this circle of going that your babies are right now. We got to get those brains ready. They're coming to our school before we know it. Getting older. But thanks for a wonderful board meeting, and that's it. Eric?
All right, well, I just want to once again thank our curriculum committee representatives for revitalizing and improving the committee. Former member, really excited to see that happen.
I just have a couple things. One was just thank you to my fellow board members for allowing me to serve as your chair again. I think that's an honor and a privilege, and I appreciate your votes of confidence. On the consent agenda tonight, there was a lot of new hires, and it was really exciting to get a packet where we're actually hiring teachers and not letting them go, and that felt really good. And just a personal note on teacher commitment. The number of teachers who serve as club directors and coaches and all that sort of extra stuff, and the amount of time they put in nights and weekends and summers that impact students. And my student had the privilege of going with a teacher who wasn't paid to a land far, far away that will change all her opportunities as an adult. And had that teacher not stepped up and taken her there, she would have a different college and career path. And so what a gift beyond the sort of traditional teaching of shaping lives. And so just gratitude to everybody, especially in the summertime, for doing that. And with that, we are adjourned early.